You hear the sound first. A slow drip, steady, echoing like the beat of a dying heart against the cold stone walls. The corridors are narrow, the air suffocating, carrying a stench both sweet and metallic, the unmistakable weight of blood. Torches burn low, their flames bending as if recoiling from the chamber ahead, where silence presses heavier than any scream. You step into the room, and the world changes. Shadows stretch like hands reaching across the floor, pulled long and distorted by the firelight. At the center, a basin glimmers, but it is not water that ripples there. It is crimson, thick, warm, catching the torchlight like liquid fire. Each ripple spreads wider as a hand rises from beneath the surface, pale, delicate, jeweled. The hand lingers in the air, glistening with red, before descending again into the depths. And then you see her, the queen. She does not flinch at the horror of her surroundings. Her posture is regal, unyielding, her chin lifted high as though every drop spilled is a tribute owed to her throne. Her skin glows with a cruel, unnatural light, too youthful for her years, too perfect to be real. Her eyes, sharp and unwavering, do not glance toward you but seem to pierce straight through your chest, as though she has already weighed your worth and found you unfit. The whispers were not just whispers. Or perhaps they were, but here they take shape, breathing in front of you. The tale of the queen who bathed in blood to keep her youth alive. A story dismissed as rumor, dismissed as myth, dismissed as the fevered invention of frightened peasants. Yet as you stand here, the boundary between truth and legend bends until it nearly breaks. Was this ritual real, or was it the invention of her enemies? A smear meant to twist her memory into a monstrous shadow? Was she truly a predator feeding on the lifeblood of her victims? Or was she merely a woman crushed under the weight of power, vanity, and fear? Imagine a queen so feared that her name became synonymous with cruelty. A queen so consumed by the terror of age that her legacy is not her crown, not her empire, but the blood that history swears she spilled to defy time itself. This is not just her story. It is a mirror, reflecting the darkest corners of desire and obsession. And tonight, you will walk through it, rumor by rumor, fact by fact, until the line between horror and history is no longer so easy to see. Before we peel back the shadows of history, tell me, would you subscribe to a queen who ruled in blood? Or would you turn away? Let me know in the comments while we begin. She was born into privilege, a daughter of nobility in a land where power flowed through bloodlines as fiercely as through battlefields. Her childhood was steeped in wealth, but also in silence, in shadows, in the cold distance of halls where love was measured less by tenderness than by usefulness. From her earliest years she learned that beauty was currency, that charm could disarm sharper than any blade, and that women of her station were not free to choose, but bred to serve dynasties. Her marriage was not one of affection, but of strategy, a political bond forged to tighten the grip of her family over rival lands. She was young, striking, and clever, qualities admired by courtiers but also feared, for ambition in a queen was often branded as menace. Behind the veil of silk and jewels, whispers already followed her, that her eyes lingered too long on mirrors, that her delight in her own reflection was deeper than vanity, that she feared the passing of time even before it had touched her face. The world around her was one of decay and danger. Wars clawed at the borders, leaving fields barren and villages starved. Disease crept through the streets, leaving bodies piled like offerings to an unmerciful sky. In such a world, where death pressed on every doorstep, youth was not simply a gift, it was a shield. To be young was to be desirable. To be desirable was to be powerful. And power, for a woman hemmed in by politics, was her only weapon. In the courts she stood radiant, her presence commanding, her beauty undeniable. But it was never enough. Each wrinkle on the faces of elder queens, each gray strand in the hair of noblewomen, whispered to her a future she could not accept. For in her world, age did not mean wisdom. It meant invisibility, irrelevance, and the slow erasure of identity. She would not allow herself to fade. The pressure was merciless. Servants, ladies-in-waiting, and courtiers all mirrored back to her the same cruel truth. A woman's worth was bound to her youth. To remain adored was to survive. To lose it was to wither not only in body but in power. So when tales emerged of strange rituals, of ointments made from blood, of secret concoctions promising to keep the flesh supple and the skin unblemished. She listened. And soon, the line between curiosity and obsession blurred. It began with rumors of her cruelty in small, unguarded moments. The servant punished too harshly, the companion dismissed in disgrace. The look in her eyes when she watched younger women arrive at court with fresh faces, their beauty blooming as hers threatened to fade. These were not the acts of a ruler content in her place. They were the first cracks in a mask that would, in time, shatter into legend. For history is a merciless judge, and those who rise too high are often buried under the weight of stories darker than the truth. Was her obsession born from vanity alone, or from the crushing demands of a world that reduced her to nothing more than her reflection? If history fascinates you as much as it does me, this is your moment to subscribe to Echoes of Time, because here, we don't just tell stories, we resurrect them. The whispers began quietly, in corners where servants gathered, their voices lowered, their eyes darting to be sure no one listened. They spoke of missing girls, of chamber doors locked at night, of cries muffled before they could become screams. At first, these tales were dismissed as gossip, the natural venom of those who lived in the shadow of power. But whispers, when repeated often enough, grow teeth. It was said that in her private chambers, hidden deep within stone walls and guarded by loyal men who feared her more than death, the queen performed rituals no court dared name. Servants claimed they saw maids summoned and never seen again. They spoke of basins filled not with scented oils, but with something thicker, darker, and warmer, blood drawn from the veins of the young. It was whispered that she would descend into it, her body immersed, her skin drinking in what life had been drained from others. The chamber itself became legend. Some claimed it was tiled in black marble, so the stains would never betray her deeds. Others described floors lined with straw, to soak up what was spilled, as though she were not a queen but a butcher. And though none agreed on the details, all agreed on the purpose. She sought to steal the youth of others, to keep it for herself, to wear beauty like a mask against time. How often did it happen? No one could say. Some swore it was once a week, others whispered it was every night. Whenever she felt a line threaten to crease her face or a shadow deepen beneath her eyes. In the stories, there was no limit to her hunger, no end to her fear of what the mirror might show. In time, these stories escaped the servants' quarters and seeped into court itself. Noblemen repeated them in cautious tones, enemies seized upon them as weapons. By the time she faced judgment, the accusations had already taken shape, that she had tortured and killed in numbers too great to count, that her thirst for blood was not symbolic but literal. At her trial, testimonies painted her as a monster who delighted in cruelty. Witnesses spoke of screams behind stone walls, of bodies discarded, of rituals that seemed torn from nightmares. But trials in those days were never purely about truth. They were theater, weapons sharpened by politics and fear. Enemies needed her destroyed, and what better way than to brand her not simply cruel, but inhuman? To accuse a queen of murder was one thing. To accuse her of bathing in blood was something else entirely. It placed her beyond redemption, beyond sympathy, into the realm of the demonic. Yet history has always been drawn to such tales. She was not the first ruler accused of chasing immortality through unholy means. Alchemists promised elixirs to kings. Philosophers hunted the secret of eternal life. Emperors swallowed mercury believing it would preserve them. Legends of immortality have always followed the powerful, because power itself is a defiance of death. But hers is the most infamous, not a search for elixirs or divine blessings, but for the flesh and blood of those beneath her. Was she truly a predator who bathed in the youth of others? Or was she merely the victim of a story twisted until it could never be untangled? Some of you may already believe this is pure legend. Others see truth hiding behind the whispers. Tell me in the comments where you stand, and if you haven't subscribed yet, what's really holding you back? To understand the Queen's darkness, you must first step into the cage that held her captive, the cage of time. For her, the passing of years was not gentle. It was a blade pressed against her throat. Each wrinkle was a threat, each gray strand a sentence. Vanity was not a trivial indulgence. It was survival in a world where women in power could be undone by the simple cruelty of age. Her obsession with youth was not hers alone. In her era, aging carried with it a profound terror. Life was fragile, sickness constant, beauty fleeting. A woman's worth was tethered to the bloom of her skin, the brightness of her eyes, the strength of her womb. To lose these was to fade from influence, to become a relic among the living. While men grew older and were celebrated for their wisdom, women withered and were discarded. For a queen who had clawed her way into authority, irrelevance was a fate worse than death. And so she clung to youth with both hands, even if it meant reaching into darkness. To control her appearance was to control her fate. To keep her beauty untouched was to keep her throne secure. Perhaps this explains the whispers of her rituals, for to her, bathing in blood may not have been cruelty alone, but a desperate attempt to master time itself. Modern historians have studied her with the eyes of psychology. Some see in her the marks of mental illness, narcissistic hunger, delusional vanity, obsessive-compulsive rituals fed by paranoia. Others argue she was the victim of a patriarchal world eager to label a powerful woman as mad, monstrous, or both. But whether sickness of the mind or sickness of the world, the result was the same. A queen consumed by fear, unable to face her own mortality. The blood itself carried meaning far beyond the act. In ancient times, blood was sacred. It was life, vitality, the force that animated flesh. To spill it was to offer sacrifice. To drink it or bathe in it was to claim power over death itself. For her, it was not simply the liquid of the body, it was the essence of youth, the currency of vitality, the elixir she believed could hold back the tide of age. This made her less a queen in the eyes of history, and more a myth made flesh. She became a figure echoing legends of vampires who fed on the young to prolong their nights. She became a shadow twin to the priests who spilled blood upon altars, to the alchemists who sought eternal life in secret chambers, to the rulers who swallowed poisons believing it would grant them immortality. Her name, whether by truth or by tale, became part of a timeless pattern. Humanity's refusal to bow before death, our willingness to cross every boundary to deny the inevitable. And here lies the heart of her story. Was she a murderer who found beauty in blood, or was she the mirror of every culture's darkest longing? The embodiment of humanity's most forbidden desire, to live forever? If this queen's mind intrigues you, imagine what other rulers of history were hiding. Subscribe to Echoes of Time so you never miss the shadows we uncover. In the end, even the most carefully guarded shadows could not protect her. Whispers became accusations, and accusations grew into charges that could no longer be silenced. Those who once bowed before her turned their eyes away, and the loyalty she demanded dissolved into fear. When her arrest came, it was not swift or violent, but deliberate, the work of men who wanted not just her downfall, but her destruction in memory. Her trial was no search for truth. It was spectacle. Witnesses lined up, each testimony darker than the last. Servants swore they had seen young women dragged into her chambers and never return. Others claimed they found garments stained with blood, rooms reeking of death. Some spoke of screams that clawed through the night, silenced as quickly as they began. Whether they spoke from memory, from fear, or from invention mattered little. Once the first stone of accusation was thrown, the avalanche was unstoppable. The image of her bathing in blood was repeated again and again, until it no longer belonged to rumor but to reality in the minds of her accusers. To the court, to the public, she was no longer a queen. She was a monster. Even her noble birth and political alliances could not shield her. Her punishment was harsh, yet calculated. She was sealed away, locked not only in stone but in legend, her name forever chained to the horror of the charges. But her true legacy did not lie in prison walls. It lived on in the stories told long after her body turned to dust. In villages and cities, parents whispered her name to frighten children into obedience. Chroniclers, hungry for scandal, repeated every tale of cruelty as fact, embellishing where silence might have suggested doubt. The more time passed, the more her humanity was stripped away, until only the monster remained. And yet, historians still argue, were her bloodbaths real acts of ritual, or the invention of enemies who understood that nothing damns a woman more than accusing her of unnatural hunger? Some suggest that her crimes were exaggerated, perhaps symbolic, used as propaganda to discredit her power. Others insist that the evidence, though tangled, is too consistent to ignore. Truth lies buried somewhere between, hidden by centuries of retelling. Still, Her name survived not as a ruler, not as a wife, not as a daughter of nobility, but as a myth. She became the dark muse of poets and playwrights, a figure reimagined in novels, painted into folklore, woven into the nightmares of countless generations. From Gothic literature to modern horror, the queen who bathed in blood walks endlessly through our imagination, more enduring than any crown she ever wore. Some of you watching will subscribe and follow the echoes deeper. Others will refuse, and I'd love to hear why in the comments. What keeps you from stepping into the shadows of history with us? And so, as her body was sealed away and her castles left to ruin, her story should have ended. But history rarely allows monsters, or martyrs, to rest quietly. Why is it that centuries later, her name still chills the spine, her face still painted in crimson whispers? It is not only because of the horror of her deeds, whether exaggerated or real. It is because she touched something timeless within us, a mirror reflecting not just her own vanity and cruelty, but the fragile fears we all carry, the fear of fading beauty, the fear of losing youth, the fear of death's hand reaching for us too soon. Her legend lingers because she represents the darkest bargain humanity has ever dreamed of. The illusion that blood, suffering, or sacrifice could cheat the passage of time. That someone, anyone, might find the elixir of eternal life, no matter the cost. And even now, centuries removed, we still chase echoes of her desire. From miracle creams to dangerous surgeries, from whispered myths of vampire immortality to the endless search for longevity, she has become the specter behind it all. Modern scholars argue whether her cruelty was truth or tale, fact or folklore. Yet it almost doesn't matter. The legend of the Blood Queen has outlived the woman herself. It has been told and retold in hushed tones, immortalized in novels, films, and nightmares. Her story is a warning, but also a temptation, because deep down, part of us wonders, if we were given her power, her wealth, her chance to hold youth forever, would we resist? Or would we, too, be willing to stain our hands with crimson? That is why her shadow stretches across centuries. She is gone, but her legend is not. Her legend bleeds through time. If stories like this linger with you long after the screen goes dark, then step with us further into the shadows. Subscribe to Echoes of Time, and together we will uncover the legends that history tried to bury.